Deputy Editor and US Editor of The Spectator. Good morning to you, Freddy.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you've been watching very closely and listening very closely to Donald Trump's state visit to the United Kingdom. All gone swimmingly well so far. He seems very happy with all the pomp and the circumstance, the ceremony, the gold carriages, the state banquet and like. But now we're down to sort of, I suppose, the real business at Chequers. How do you think that's going to go?
Well, you're exactly right, Julia. I mean, it's almost been boring for journalists so far. There's been nothing really to talk about of any great interest.
Melania's dress. But anyway, we'll let that go.
We find ourselves talking about Melania's hat. I'm always happy to do. But no, today is the crunch point. And of course, everybody is anticipating questions about Jeffrey Epstein and so on. But we'll also cover possibly free speech in Britain, which is an issue that a lot of Americans, transatlantic MAGA people, I usually call them, are very interested in. J.D. Vance, the Vice President, is very concerned about free speech in Britain and the British government, Keir Starmer's government's attempts to clamp down on social media and so on. And Trump has brought with him these tech titans. And so that will be the other aspect of this. We have this huge investment, this £50 billion investment of tech companies, US tech companies.
And would that not have happened if we hadn't had this trip? I mean, do these people suddenly go, oh, OK, I'm just going to put billions of quid into a new business venture in Britain, but I wasn't going to unless there'd been a state banquet for the president?
No. I mean, of course, it's not as simple as that. But I do think Trump would have applied pressure for that investment to come now so that it could be announced. He loves doing these sort of global big cap boards where he goes to the Middle East and extracts billions, or goes somewhere else and promises billions. It's all about making these big number announcements, and he loves doing that. But there are concerns, legitimate concerns, I think, from economists and experts in technology, who say, well, what are we agreeing to here? Is this a kind of tech takeover of very important parts of British infrastructure and so on? That needs to be clarified, and it's not at the moment.
Well, indeed, and it's interesting. You mentioned Epstein. I think a lot of journalists are going to get very caught up in that, and it's going to be. I think a lot of it is quite lurid, but it's also quite, Westminster bubble for a lot of people. Free speech, not so much. But I mean, there's also the issues of two wars on which it would seem the British and the American governments rather disagree. In terms of the Brits want Donald Trump to be more solidly behind Ukraine, and the Americans want the Brits to not do silly things like recognise the Palestinian state when Israel is in Gaza.
Well, yes, it's funny, isn't it, that on the UK trip, on Donald Trump's state visit here, they're going to sort of probably try and elide over Gaza and the differences there as much as possible. And then British delegation will go to the UN in New York later this month and grandstand about Palestine. So it's typical diplomacy. It's all just trying to get through it on the occasion itself.
And it's very interesting. We often talk on this side of the Atlantic about the special relationship with the US. Then we're told, oh, for goodness sake, Macron gets invited to the inauguration, not Starmer. They care more about, what's going on in the Far East rather than what's going on in Europe. It doesn't really matter. Yesterday, in the speech given by Donald Trump at the state banquet, it was nothing but an outpouring of love, not just for the King personally, but also for Britain, his love of Britain. How much does this relationship matter in the big scheme of things for our security, our defence, our economy, our diplomatic power, soft and hard? How significant is this?
Historically, the US and the British relationship is, of course, very, very important. I do think we Brits, and I say this as a person who loves my country, we have this slight tendency to exaggerate how important Americans think the monarchy is. Even Donald Trump, much as he loves it, much as he'll just enjoy this pomp and ceremony and so on, it doesn't mean that he's going to go back to Washington and sort of redirect all American foreign policy, international affairs and so on, so that he can please the king. It's very nice, it's very good that Britain has this advantage with Donald Trump, but I don't think we should read too much into it.
And in terms of, you mentioned, these tech deals and the economic benefits. I mean, I suppose, there's always a tourism benefit. This is pictures of Windsor Castle, lavish banquets. It's all splashed all over American TV. American tourists spend a heck of a lot of money here. It's a big part of our employment and our GDP here. But in terms of those tech investments, other economic investments, how much benefit will the average Brit get get from this, given that we're the ones whose taxes have been used to pay for a lavish state banquet and all the security and everything else?
Well, it depends who you believe. According to some people, it'll create thousands of jobs. According to others, and this has been the pattern with big technology investments in the past, is that actually technology tends to lose jobs, particularly in the short term. It may create efficiencies elsewhere, we'll see, and it may be very good for the economy, but it's a debatable point, this huge cash inflow, and what actually it will do to the British economy.
And just finally, what's going to be the most difficult moment for Keir? I mean, Donald Trump, he doesn't care about difficult moments with the media. He'll say whatever he wants to say. But what's the big risk for Keir Starmer at this press conference tonight?
I mean, I think Epstein probably, if Trump goes on a rant about Epstein, which he might, because he's fed up, he wants to move the conversation. But often when he wants to move the conversation on, he ends up creating more news. So if Trump goes on a big rant at a reporter about Epstein and it puts Starmer in a difficult position, that's one potential flashpoint.
Especially if he points out that he dropped Epstein as a friend long before these charges were brought against him for child prostitution soliciting.
Well, exactly. I mean, I suspect they'll both try and just bat the questions away, no matter how many there are. But I think the other issue is, of course, free speech. If Donald Trump says, I'm concerned to hear, he may, so far, in all his encounters with Starmer, he has sort of accepted Starmer's version of it and said, oh, it's your problem.
Yeah.
But if he brings it up again, as a lot of Americans are pressuring him to do, including tech giants, then that could be an awkward moment.
Yeah, tech giants can do well when it comes to freedom of speech, as far as I'm concerned, but there we are. They don't have a strong track record. Freddy Gray, US editor at The Spectator, thank you very much.